Yes, hello there, Sprinkles. There's a very interesting survey that was done by Mr. Gold Key. I've made a video on this already. Thank you very much for like, subscribe, press the bell button, all friends. This video, I'm bullish on the Richard Heart ecosystem to a $150 billion target. And just to let you know, right now, the total altcoin index, removing stablecoins, is 245 billion. So at the top, we hit, I know it tapped 1 trillion here, 1 trillion. So if we got back up there, or even a bit higher, I mean, this is even huge. If we got to 1.5 trillion, for Richard Heart's ecosystem to be 150 billion is enormous. You're literally 10% of the entire non-Bitcoin and non-Ethereum market cap. That is phenomenal size. So this interesting survey can give us information and guide, because I was around in 2018, 2019, 2020. I saw the crowd get things wrong in a big way. And I learned what Ray Dalio would say, that the crowd always bakes the price in. This is a very important lesson. The crowd expects 100x for PulseX. So I wanted to know, what is the crowd implying? What does everybody expect if you add up each individual Pulse, PulseX, eHEX, PHEX? What do we actually expect? So I'm very grateful to Mr. Goldkey for doing this manually, all right? Now, of course, what everyone expects is a 280x rally from PulseX. So that's going to be wrong. Is it going to be wrong to the upside or downside? We don't know. Is it going to go a 1000x in the next cycle, or is it going to underwhelm that? That's what we don't know. Most of the time, you're going to find out it in markets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything else, they unfortunately are underwhelming. But there is a chance we still go higher, so we don't know, right? I'm not going to pretend to know the future. Nobody does. Something to think about too, I have the total crypto index, and it broke the high around here. And when we broke the high, the total valuation of crypto went up a 39x. Fantastic. That's why everybody got screwed in 2021. You're wondering why was it such a letdown? It was because last time it broke the high, it went up 39x. Primarily because of Bitcoin and Ethereum not being in the late part of their cycle. Ethereum was new and fresh. It was Ethereum's first cycle. So it did a 39x in that first high. That's when it broke the top, okay? From the bottom was 367x. But keep that number in mind, 39x. That's how much it broke the top. It broke the top 39x. What did it do in the next cycle? In the next cycle, it only went up 3.8x. So 39x, 3.8x. Do you see how much of a letdown that was? Now, it's dividing by 10. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to divide by 10 again, but if it did, it would mean we just kind of get up to crypto 4 trillion. That's what it would mean. That's what it would imply crypto only goes to about 4 trillion. And coincidentally, this would roughly equate to Bitcoin 80,000, Ethereum 8,000, and then the altcoins make up the rest. That's what it implies at that rate. So what I wanted to do was calculate for you to show you the HEX, Pulse, and PulseX coins and what would actually happen if the crowd's expectations were met. So what I did was I have this, let's start with Pulse, right? So Pulse, starting market cap 1 billion. I used to have 670 million, but they gave a lot of coins to whales for the bonus. So what I did was I just added a plus 50%. Basically gave out a lot of coins. Now, the crowd expects 100 billion. Market cap. So remember, just to remind you what I'm doing, what I've done is I've gone to all the surveys, looked at everything, and I'm like, okay, if I grab every single survey individually and I put everything together, I wonder what the picture's going to say. And this is what I've done now, right? So the crowd expects 100 billion for PulseChain, a 100x from day one sacrifice. What about PulseX? The crowd expects a 100x. That would be a $150 billion number, okay? Now, you can already see that this number is bigger, but everybody's expecting a 100x, and that's obviously because a lot of people will defend the fact that they'll say, well, market cap doesn't matter, we can go higher, there's a big buy and burn, you're not factoring in the volume. That's what they're going to say. That's on that side of the camp, okay? But this is what the number, this is what I'm saying, so I'm not even here to tell you whether it's going to be right or wrong. We don't know the future, but this is what they're implying. They're implying PulseX is higher than Pulse in the future. So obviously something hasn't been added up correctly with everyone, unless you really think a DEX is going to flip a layer 1 chain, which has never been done before in crypto. What about with HEX? Well, with HEX, from all the influencers, everybody I've spoken to, okay, everybody's like vehemently will not back away from this. They will say 100x for HEX from the low, 100x. And that was from last year, remember, 1.8 cents from the low. They're expecting a 100x minimum from the low. That gives you $1.80. So the total circulating market cap for total HEX, I'm using total HEX here, is 162 billion. So you have these numbers, 100, 150, and 162. It roughly adds up to 450 billion for the crowd's expectation of the Richard Heart ecosystem. Now, I understand, once again, people will say, market cap doesn't matter, these numbers don't mean anything, I don't really care, all right? I was here, I'm here to try to help you. That's why you like, subscribe, you follow me, friends. I'm here to give you the truth. I was here in 2019, I saw what happened. I saw the narratives every single day. I'm here 18 hours a day, paying careful attention. I saw the crowd's expectations not get met. I saw the crowd get everything wrong. Everyone expected here 100K, all right? Now, it looks close on a log chart, but on a linear chart, where you can see that's where everyone expected. We didn't get there. We got about halfway. So in my experience, when we go through these numbers, there's a bull and a bear case in terms of how much do you undershoot or overshoot. When it comes to overshooting, pretty much the sky's the limit when it comes to these. It could be a triple, it could be a 10x. So if you want to, let's do the bull side first. So if people did a triple, if we actually got a triple on top of what everybody expects from today, the total would be, so the bull case would be about bull equals 1.2 trillion valuation for RH ecosystem. And I'd just like to remind you, so that would mean we literally dwarf the entire crypto industry. So I can even show you right here. So right now we're 244 billion. If like to get 1.2 trillion at the peak of 2021, we were only 1 trillion. So this means PulseX and HEX have taken over everything, absolutely everything. So this means this whole move, everything going up is literally just Richard Heart ecosystem. Even if we get up here, 1.6 trillion, it means we are 75% of the entire altcoins. Everyone does a big, great rotation in. So that's what that world is predicting. And what prices would that be? Well, it would be 300x for Pulse, 300x for PulseX. HEX would be about $5.40, $5 total HEX. You know, maybe eHEX is $2, maybe PHEX is $3. That's the world that everyone believes is coming in the next 24 months in this bull market. That's right ahead. Now, that's the upside. So what about the downside? So if you were to ask me, on average, if you flip a coin or on average, if you have to bet on which way the crowd usually gets it wrong, the crowd is usually too optimistic when it comes with these. That's on average. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but on average, it's too optimistic. Whenever these get brought up, everybody will go to, they do this every time, they will go to Ethereum early days. And what they'll do is, because I know I've seen people do this, okay? They'll go to Ethereum early days and they'll go and find Vitalik not even conceptualizing that Ethereum can grow so big. And they'll say, see, even Vitalik doubted Ethereum and it went up so much. And then what they'll do is they'll also go to Bitcoin and they'll go through the earlier expectations. And you've seen this tweet all over Twitter where someone says, I completely regret selling my Bitcoin at $11. So that's what they'll always bring. They'll bring out super, super early days. But this is what we call anchoring. Okay, so we are anchoring an event and we're saying, look at this, look at this, look at this. We're fixating on that. But what we're actually really, unfortunately, doing as well is this is survivorship bias. So we're taking the two unicorns and we're completely disregarding the 40,000 dead bodies. So we have a false sense of survivability. We think the survivability and the success rate of this is high of us achieving these overly optimistic or super bull targets. So that's actually what happens over time. This happens in the stock market, Wall Street. This happens everywhere, right? Tesla, Amazon, you name it. Okay. So in my experience, whenever you see numbers like this, the base minimum case, you're like, okay, worst case, worst scenario, everything that can happen, you divide everything by 10. So you end up landing minus 90% where the crowd expects, minus 90%. So that would be 450 billion divided by 10, 45 billion. So bear case. This would be the bear. Now, obviously, this is really low because 45 billion is roughly what total HEX peaked at in the last cycle. And this is the total HEX chart. So roughly up here, it was 90 billion circulating coins, tapped 50 cents. This is a $45 billion, 45B market cap valuation up here, okay? This is what the market basically stopped at. So when you have this, if we actually went up, it would be like if this happened, I'm not saying this will happen, but this would be considered a phenomenal disaster. And why is that? Well, that's because if the best you can do is go back to your total HEX high, then what this means is it means PulseChain and PulseX have added no value. It means all we did was we had a pie and we split it into 3 parts, okay? We split it into 3 parts and that was it. We have HEX, Pulse, PulseX, whatever it is, and maybe the Pulse guys win the most. But the Pulse guys would have only won the most because a lot of the HEX money went in and you were able to get in first. So that's what that would mean here if we stopped at around there. Now, I'm just giving you the super bear case. That's what it is, okay? And now we're going to continue and show you what would be the better case for that. The better case, so I won't even call it a bull case. The better case, and there will be a bull here, would be, so remember 45 billion, that's dividing it by 10 from 450. But if you divide the crowd by 3, that is where you can normally land. You divide it by 3. So that would be about 150 billion. This is interesting when you look at this number, now that I look at it, because when we go to my target, I was like, well, I think the good target would be 150 billion for the Richard Heart ecosystem. So everybody's a bit blind when you look at each number individually, but when you put them all together, you're seeing how everything adds up. And before we continue, just have a quick look at what these numbers would be. So what would actually these numbers be if we got this $150 billion number, or what about this $45 billion number? So we can actually bring it up here. We can just have a quick look, okay? So it would be, if you wanted to do the better case, okay? So on average, the kind of target what would be, it was the numbers I gave before. So it would be for HEX, total HEX would be about 50 cents, okay? So total HEX, roughly 50 cents, you know, you could stop at 40, you could stop at 70, 80, you can ping somewhere there, but that's roughly what it would be. And for Pulse and PulseX, they would be about 50x from today. So it would be about 50x from today. Now, of course, if you do 50x here, so 50x from today, so about 50x, and then you have 50x from today. So these numbers, of course, it hurts, 50x from today. It hurts because no matter how you look at it, unfortunately, too many of us sacrifice for PulseX. The valuation is too high. All the ratios and everything's just suggesting PulseX doesn't want to be that high. And I even have the PulseX to Pulse ratio to show you. We opened about 0.25, 0.20, and then someone, wink, wink, magically just started FOMO pumping it by himself, millions and millions of dollars to push it up to 0.5. But then the market, see, you can only send this a price somewhere, but it doesn't mean the market has to accept it. As you can see now, we've just been floating down. Basically, the market nobody really believes that PulseX is worth that much. So even though we tried to jam it higher, we're coming back down. Now, hopefully, this oscillates and it gets defended here, but it's giving you an idea of the picture of what's going on. And if you look at DEXs and other layer 1 chains, it makes sense because DEXs are the risk on, risk off indicator, but the layer 1 chains are always worth much more than DEXs. So what would actually change this so that we can get a bull case? And I know nobody wants to hear this, but it actually depends on Richard Heart. It really does. So I made this long thread, right? It's not really long. It has a lot of information here and thoughts here to share with you. So here I ask, right, will Richard Heart, the founder, will he devise a plan to spread the PulseChain community far and wide? Because it actually is going to depend on the PulseChain ecosystem growing. Do we get other networks? Like, just to give you guys an example, Richard Heart launched the HEX community, which is now a Ethereum competitor. He launched it on Ethereum. That's the wide scope of what Ethereum was able to bring to the table. We don't have that now, okay? We use Ethereum. That's how useful Ethereum was. Everybody was on the ecosystem. It has such a wide range of use cases, and it does have all the money there too. Even though we copy paste everything, there is a unique advantage they have by having that first mover advantage. So we definitely do need more ecosystems, more communities, more networks. It can't just be a Richard Hart coin if you want to get that super bull case. If you believe, so the crowd believes we hit $500 billion valuation minimum, and if they're wrong and it hits $1 trillion, well, you need it to be bigger than just one person. That's what has happened in history, and it makes sense when you think about that, okay? So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't even know if that's possible, friends. I'll be honest. I don't even know if is it economically feasible to fight Ethereum that way? Because Ethereum has all the mind share. Like, is it just better to become a layer 2? I don't know. Only a genius can figure this out. This is something that is for another discussion. So roughly 50x for Pulse, 50x for today for PulseX would be about 13.5x from day one sack, and total HEX getting to 50 cents. Now, this is just to cover the base, because I understand absolutely no one believes this will happen, because yes, of course, right? I've given you the cases here. So the crowd expects 450 billion. All right. So if we get the bull case, it's 1.2 trillion. And if we get the bear cases, you're going to see it right now. And I'm going to finish off with the adoption page here, because a lot of people are asking, why can't we get Pulse, PulseX, and HEX? Why can't we get a definitive answer as to whether it can go to like 500 billion, 1 trillion valuation and higher? And that's because of the community makeup, the personality, everybody in the community. Now, the people in the community, we are the same people. The market said, basically, and we all know this, right? Pulse, right, plus PulseX, plus total HEX, even though we say they're 3 different use cases, we say Pulse is like Ethereum, PulseX is the DEX, and HEX is a store of value. Even though we say all these things, okay, the market said, you know what? I don't think so. You guys are all the same people, so your valuation is 1. You are just an RH coin. So that's what the market says now. Can things change in the future? Absolutely. It can change in the future. That's why we are all long. But right now, if we continue the same path we're at, where everybody is hanging on Richard's every word, and you know this, like Richard with one tweet, literally with one tweet, he can send eHEX to 0. And you all know this. The liquidity is so thin, he can send eHEX to 0. He can basically, with a few words, ensure that nobody ever stakes HEX seriously long-term again. That is the world we live in. This is the risk of centralization, but he also has the power to empower it all. So we don't know what's going to happen, okay? But we can't argue with this right now. These are the facts. These are the numbers. The numbers are saying we're still the same community. We are all the same. So do we split off? Do we have Pulse maxis, PulseX maxis, HEX maxis? I don't know. But obviously right now, it's going to be a very hard case to make that they're going to be people who come in and are going to have completely separate mindset between them. It seems like everything's just going to be ratio bonded, and the crowd's just going to go between them, but it's all going to be cycling that, okay? So I remember making my guesses here a while ago. Right here this is 1 million people in the ecosystem. This green line here. And where we are right now is like 150, 200,000. If we actually go to about 1 million, 1.5 million people up here, this would be, using Metcalfe's law, it's roughly a 100x. It is. So you might say, well, 100x. But remember, this is the same people. So we've added 10x more people. But we don't know the future. Will these people split between Pulse, PulseX, HEX, or are they just going to be one Richard Hart umbrella wing? That's what we don't know. Obviously, if you can get HEX to get 1 million people, and then Pulse to get another 1 million people, and PulseX to have a separate 1 million people, now we have $500 billion to 1 trillion valuation. So that's why I want to ask you, what do you think is going to happen? Have you planned for the scenarios where this occurs and the community does grow, but the pie just splits in a different way? Okay, so that's what we have to explore here today, and that's what we have explored. because I'm still confident at the end of the day, people who have a long-term view, who took advantage of this long, gruesome bear market, and people who were able to stand in front of the FUD, we will come out ahead. And everybody coming at the end, they are going to probably believe the hype all over again, and they're going to regret it. You have been prepared now. You are my friend forever. Straight posture. Tell mum and dad we still love them. I'm going to catch you guys in the next one.